you feel like if you buy a home that no one should be able to tell you what to do with your own property? This is a type of comment I've been getting a lot with my code enforcement video that I made 2 years ago. And while it's not a viral video, it's gotten a healthy amount of views for such a narrow topic. But what it tells me that there are a lot of people getting code enforcement letters, and there are a lot of strong feelings about it. Because I've gotten some strong reactions and comments to the topic of code enforcement letters, I wanted to do a follow-up to answer questions and scenarios that were brought up there. The first thing you need to do is that it doesn't matter what you or I think about code enforcement letters. The central issue is how to deal with a complaint letter and then make it go away. Throwing the complaint letter aside and ignoring it doesn't help. All it does is result in getting liens put on your property if it goes ignored long enough. I've seen this firsthand with a person who disregarded code enforcement letters and disrespected the process. Don't let this happen to you. I am also not a big fan of code enforcement as a government agency, but I understand why they exist. It's sort of like taxes. No one likes it, but we put up with it as part of living in modern society. I see code enforcement in a similar manner. You don't have to like it, but if you want to be part of city life, you have to be mindful of code enforcement. If you don't ever want to deal with code enforcement, there are people who live in remote areas away from civilization. But most of us want to live amongst other citizens and neighbors. I am generally a pragmatist. I am focused on solving problems. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they get a code enforcement letter is that they start lashing out. In particular, one of the stupidest things to do is to verbally attack, insult, and cuss out a property inspector. And yes, this actually happens. Oftentimes, code enforcement letter recipients are shooting the messenger, not the source. There's a good chance that someone ratted you out for whatever reason. Sometimes getting reported to code enforcement is a sneaky way for a neighbor to personally attack you or get revenge against you. If you get along with your neighbors and not push boundaries, you are less likely to get code enforcement complaints. Generally, most code enforcement agencies send a property inspector to vet a complaint to find out if there are grounds for a formal complaint. For example, if someone files a bogus complaint against your property, reputable code enforcement officers won't just write up a complaint if there isn't a legitimate basis for it. Reputable code enforcement agencies have rules and policies for their inspectors to take photos and collect evidence. It isn't like some random person complained about a property and then the inspectors go out to the properties to sabotage it to justify a complaint. It doesn't work like that. Now, am I suggesting to you that you can't fight back wrongful code enforcement complaints or some bad actors? Of course not. I definitely believe there are some inspectors that abuse their position to harass some citizens. But I think that is a rare and isolated incident to smaller areas where there is a lot less public accountability. I'm a big believer of aggressive self-advocacy, but taking an overly emotional, hysterical, unprofessional, irrational approach will not make your code enforcement letter go away. It just makes it worse. You are hurting yourself, you hurt your credibility, and your reputation. The other mistake people make about code enforcement letters is fighting fights that are not worth fighting. For example, if you get a nitpicky complaint that is relatively easy and inexpensive to fix, it might be easier to just fix it and get off your desk. For example, if there's a complaint letter about litter or overgrown grass on your property, it seems to me that tidying up or cleaning up is just less stressful than trying to fight for the right to have more litter on your property. Or if you feel the matter isn't urgent, is it so hard to simply call and ask the code enforcement inspector for more time than to be belligerent about it? For example, my cat Lexi tells me it's not that hard for me to ask you to swipe that like button so that other people who get code enforcement letters watch this video. As a special bonus, I agreed to give Lexi some rotisserie chicken meat, which she really loves if you hit that subscribe button. If you feel that code enforcement is being excessive and causing you undue hardship by their complaint, You want to have a dialogue with the inspector to explain the situation. If not the inspector, then ask for a superior officer. You'll want to chunk down and manage the complaint. Most code enforcement letters are pre-printed form letters, but there is a lot of flexibility that can be given if you are engaged in the process. It's a lot harder to get consideration or flexibility from code enforcement if you are dismissive, rude, or profane. Another mistake people make is that they don't read the letter carefully and understand the finer points. It's possible to read too much into a code enforcement letter. You may think it's a much bigger deal than it really is. Recently, I helped someone with a code enforcement letter. When I first read it, I didn't quite understand it. I thought it was more severe than it really was. I reread the letter and conferred with the inspector to get clarification. Once I understood the issue, I spent $10 at Home Depot to resolve the matter. The round trip to Home Depot was actually much more of a hassle than the 10 minutes to actually correct the problem. I took photos, I messaged the inspector, and the case was over. Not only that, she complimented me in a phone call and said that she wished everyone communicated with her like I did. I help others with their code enforcement letters, so I always try to create goodwill whenever I can. I want to acknowledge that it's possible you might be right that your complaint letter is excessive, but it is much better to confirm the issue by speaking with someone at code enforcement first. It may not be as big a deal as you might think it is, but you have to be sure. If a code enforcement complaint is off base, you should take photos and collect evidence that will support your argument against it. By all means, use that as part of your counter-argument to dismiss or diminish the complaint. Another big mistake people make when dealing with code enforcement letters is that they don't have a plan. They are not strategic about it. Some people think in binary terms. It's either on or off. It's all or nothing with them. Often in life, problems and situations can be resolved somewhere in the middle ground. Whether it is something small such as overgrown yard, litter, or ugly items on a property, or something larger when there is major damage and defects on a property that require expensive repairs. In my experience, a problem and complaint can be chunked down. Code enforcement letters often have a deadline, but these deadlines are often flexible and can be changed if you stay in contact with code enforcement. They can be more flexible if you reasonably explain your issues and challenges and show efforts that you are making progress towards resolving the overall complaint. Don't ever be shy in asking for time extensions. It costs you nothing to ask. In helping others, I've run into situations where either time or money is an issue. Sometimes it isn't the cost issue, but you need more time. Sometimes it isn't the time frame, you are short on money. Either way, code enforcement won't know unless you communicate your issue with them. Most reputable code enforcement agencies are not interested in penalizing or punishing its citizens. Reputable code enforcement agencies are not in the business of extorting money to generate revenue for the city or the county. What they want to see is progress in taking corrective action and compliance. I'm not going to get into it here, but if you really feel strongly that you're in the right and code enforcement is absolutely off base, I suggest you complain to your local city council, mayor, or other influential people to support your cause. In theory, code enforcement complaints are supposed to be based on local, county, or municipal codes and laws. However, this is a very technical and legalistic approach to fighting a code enforcement complaint. I personally think that this is one of the last approaches you should take, but it is a legitimate option if you feel they are wrongfully applying local codes and laws against you. And if you really want to go public with your complaint, you could approach a local TV news station and see if they will report on your story. Local TV news stations are always hungry for a good news story. If code enforcement really is corrupt or abusive towards you, going public might be a good way to get them to back down.